The amount of information that I've gained from this has been extremely valuable. And Amy, thank you so much for putting this on. I have so much fun. It should be illegal on these podcasts.
Well, if we were all in person, we'd probably go do something illegal together right now that we're done.
Wouldn't that be great?
In today's busy world, how can we find the inspiration, knowledge, and energy to live a healthy and empowered life? If we balance and harmonize our mind, exercise our body, live according to the laws of nature, and connect to spirit, can we find a way to heal, become our authentic self, and live our purpose with love? I am your hostess, Amy Fournier, and welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite. Welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite. The show is about helping you to be healthy and fit in mind, body, and spirit, as well as harmonize your masculine and feminine energy, tap into your intuition, your true source of power, and awaken your authentic self. Well, folks, today is part 2 of our 2-part Sacred Polarities podcast panel. I hope you checked out part 1. That's episode number 139. These episodes were conceived by me as an idea to get together in the same show a group of people that I know, love, and respect to get their thoughts and opinion on the sacred polarities, the duality of life, the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine, the dance between the two, and how we harmonize and have discretion in ourselves to know when to be more in one type of energy and when to be more in the other type of energy. Because when we figure that out, we are going to have harmony, ease, joy, inspiration, achievement, productivity, happiness, downloads, insight. We're going to have it all because it's the mixture of the go and the flow. And that's what the show is about. So I got together a group of my friends, and this is part 2. Part 1, 139. You want to check it out because we laid the groundwork. We kind of talked about, all right, what are the definitions of what are we talking about here? What are the polarities and how they're not really a gender thing. It's more of an energy or a principle. We also talked about the common, you've probably heard it, this common term, toxic masculinity going around. And we talked about the emasculation of men and some archetype stuff. So we kind of laid some groundwork. It was really fun, really educational. But as often happens on my show, we didn't get to half the questions that I wanted to talk to people about. So I just asked them all to come back. Everyone came back with the exception of our friend Josh Trent. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make part 2, but we've got everybody else in the house. So that includes Aleks Rybczynski, Nicole Devaney, Sara Gustafson, Dr. Nathan Riley, Allison Pillow, and Ryan Sprague. Make sure you check out all the stuff on these guys in the show notes. We don't have a lot of room in the show notes to include a lot of things, but worst comes to worst, you know what to do. Just search them out. They're easy to find. Most of them have their own podcasts, which are amazing. By the way, all of them have been on my show with individual episodes. So when you hear a voice or one of them is saying something that just really resonates with you right now, please check them out. Check out the episode they did with me to go a little deeper with them. They're all just such beautiful, wise people that I just adore so much. All right, so part 2 is different than part 1 because this is the practical application. I tried to really get into these guys' personal lives and their minds as like, okay, come on, just give me the juice here. Like, how do you actually harmonize? Like, do you have challenges being too, like, pushing yourself, too much doing, too much thinking, and not enough, passivity and just relaxing and trusting and letting go and self-care? Or do you have trouble getting going? Are you somebody that just has trouble getting motivated and is scattered and just is loses track of time easily and late for appointments? Like, tell me how you actually manage these two polarities and any tips you have for us. Then I asked them their honest opinion, and this might be a little controversial, but I went there, on, all right, what's the deal on current society's confusion with okay, now you have to be everything.
like you have to bring home the bacon, fry it up in the pan. The men have to go slay the dragon, but then they also have to want to talk about your feelings and bring you chicken soup when you're sick. You know, like what is going on, and how do you feel about a lot of this confusion with people's roles and the lack of traditional roles, and the fact that society is kind of like everything's open all over the place, but a lot of people are really struggling with that. Does it make more sense in a relationship to kind of know, all right, this is kind of what I do, this is kind of what you do, this works for us? Are men currently becoming soft in society, and are women currently too hard? What do you feel about that? So that's the juice of the show. Toward the end, I just want to point out as well, there's a special section which is really beautiful and heartfelt about how women, and particularly mothers, have often felt less than by being a young new mom. So this might really resonate with you. And, you know, breastfeeding in public, and, you know, quote unquote, not producing income and having value, and that whole self-esteem thing. So that's just a really beautiful discussion we have. And we talked about men's circles, the true opinion of these guys on, all right, what's the deal on men's groups and men's circles? Do you feel they're effective? Do you feel, well, just how do you feel about them in general? And that's about it. So then this is just a packed show of information. You might want to listen to it twice. And like I said, please check out their work, check out their previous appearances on my show. And you know what to do if you want to support me. Subscribe, share it, leave a review would be amazing. And if you check out my products on my website, that helps me as well, and you, because you get a discount. Okay, let's dive in now with this esteemed panel and talk about the sacred polarities. All right. Welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier and my esteemed panel of amazing guests. We have everybody back from part one, with the exception of our friend Josh Trent. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us for part two, but we have everyone else back. So before we get started with everybody that's just been so awaiting this amazing part two of part one, I just would like to quickly go around and give everybody the opportunity just to share where you're located and anything you just want to share about yourself and your work in the world. So why don't we just start with Ryan?
What's up, guys? My name is Ryan Sprague. I'm a cannabis coach. I own Highly Optimized, and my mission in the world is to usher in the next generation of cannabis consumers and users into a holistic, healthy lifestyle. And I do that through the Connect with Cannabis program, the Grow with Cannabis course, and the mastermind that we're creating right now.
Beautiful. Nicole?
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Devaney, and I'm out of Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm an instructor for the Czech Institute, and I consider myself a how-to healer and a witch. I like to teach people how to do the work themselves so that they become their own practitioner.
Perfect. Aleks?
Hey guys, I'm Aleks Rybczynski. I'm in Austin, Texas. I'm a master Czech practitioner, neurosomatic therapist. My wife, Sara Gustafson, and we run a community called Primal Pride. We help rehabilitate people and sell herbs for the volcano on top of that.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
Hey, I got to get back into all that. So you just put a little fire under my pants. We'll talk offline with that. Thank you, Aleks. And let's go to your lovely other half, Sara.
I'm Sara Gustafson. I am a Czech practitioner and an ordained minister. And like Aleks said, we collaborate and create with our online coaching and mentoring platform, Primal Pride, and practice our private practice here in Austin, Texas, Primal Fusion, Holistic Health and Performance. And I am the author of Holistic Health and Performance for Women at the Czech Institute. You should check that out.
Yeah, I mean, you actually wrote the manual, the course for the Czech Institute for women's workouts. Nuts. That's crazy. Just wanted to clarify that for the audience, what that just meant. Like, that's amazing. Okay, and Dr. Nathan Riley.
I'm Nathan Riley. I'm a physician. I live in Louisville, Kentucky, super close to the Czech tribe. I was Angie and Paul's OBGYN for their second baby. I've got a course at the Czech Institute. It's called, it's a long title, Natural Fertility and Integrated Approach to Reproductive Health, which is a great complement to Sara's amazing course. I spend some time vaporizing the Primal Fusion herbs as well. Everybody should go and stock up. I've got 2 board specialties. I'm an OBGYN. I'm also a hospice and palliative care physician. I help people get pregnant and have babies on their own terms, laying down the healthiest soil possible. Got courses coming out. I got all that stuff at belovedholistics.com.
Wow. And you don't sleep. That's incredible.
9 hours a day.
Wow. And you have 2 little babies.
And 2 babies. The second was born at home, 50 feet from where we're sitting.
Yeah. In like 2 hours, right? I remember that you were on my show. We talked about that.
Very,
That's
very
nuts.
rapid, healthy childbirth.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of the things I love about you guys in a lot of the Czech world is, people that practice what they preach. It's like we are our work, right? I mean, that's kind of the whole idea, and we live it, and that gives us the authenticity, hopefully, that people can feel, And we have Allison.
I'm Allison Pillow. Hello, everybody. Yes, I started out as a Czech practitioner back in 2006, decades ago. And I now am an author of Finally Thriving. It's your guide to empowered wellness. And I have a course and a live coaching program for that one that is offered 3 times a year. I just came out with the album hasn't come out yet. It hasn't launched. It launches in February. So I'm getting into music and spoken word and singing with that. So that is part of the book as well. That's just an extension of the book with music, just to give people an extra layer and experience with that. So that comes out in February. And I have a podcast called Integrate Yourself. And I think that's about it. I've got a lot of different projects going on all the time, but my main thing right now is the Finally Thriving book. I did the audiobook as well, so that's also available. So I'm just really exploring voice, helping people empower themselves through grounding themselves in really practical, easy ways to connect with your body, your voice, ways to express yourself, that it really expands your creative potential. And, we go past limiting beliefs and what people think they can do. So I help people get past those limiting beliefs and really rise to their potential in their lives.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. And again, welcome back. So as we discussed in part 1, we went into basically the definitions for people. We clarified, what are we talking about when we're talking about the sacred polarities, the masculine and feminine energy that's in all things. And we also got into a little bit about clearing up the misunderstandings about the toxic masculine and the toxic feminine, for that matter, and role models in the culture, negative and positive ones. And it was just a beautiful discussion. We even got a little bit into the archetypes and the work of Carl Jung and the soul and the anima and the animus that's existent as the opposite in each of us. So just revisit that part 1 for more of the background. But now we're going to get more into like the nitty gritty, the everyday life of how you guys, people that I admire and respect so much, how you guys actually harmonize the masculine and feminine essence in yourselves in a busy, demanding, everyday life, a challenging life. So why don't we start with, let's start with Nathan, because not right now, you're at the top of my screen and I won't lose anybody in order, I hope. And I'd love to hear, Nathan, how the polarities play out in your life, both personally and professionally, although there's probably not much of a boundary there for like most of us, how they play out in your life and what challenges you might have and what you do to harmonize them.
Well, it's a great question, Amy. I think that on the personal level as a father, I think a lot of us men don't have great modeling for what it means to be a dad. And I don't just mean, does your dad beat the shit out of you or does your dad cuddle you? I mean, like, what is the actual role of a man caring for a person who's giving birth? There's nobody out there really talking about this or teaching this. And I'm incorporating it into some upcoming courses and whatnot, because I think there's a great desire for men who realize that, hey, it's not just a matter of fixing the problem. It's also learning how to control your own reactions and emotions to a little kid that's just screaming, because they have so much stuff that's happening and shifting, and especially a little baby that is now yours. You have to take care of this pretty little pet And nobody out there really talks to you about what you can do. So a lot of men will say something like, well, I don't have anything to give them. You know, they just want mom because mom has, you know, the breasts and the milk supply and all this. But that's actually, I want to confront that, this sort of what seems like a trivial sort of language that we use, but your role as the dad is to actually be comfortable with not having the answer. Your job is really to be able to control your emotions and to just bear witness, let's say, to a little baby that's screaming, because that baby just wants you to love it through those really, really challenging experiences of being a baby, right? All the way up through adolescence. On a more professional level, although I guess that kind of bleeds into professional, it's hard to distinguish the two sometimes for me. I want everybody to imagine a sperm meets an egg, and there's this egg that's this vacuolated, filled with tons of water, this big swollen cell. It's actually the only cell you can see with the human eye. It's completely swollen. It's now traveling through the fallopian tube, and this little sperm, this sort of embodiment of the yang, there's going to be an explosion in this egg, this giant vacuolated, it's like the physical representation of the yin is now going to engulf this sperm. They're going to be intermingled, and then we're going to eventually get a baby out of this, out of seemingly nothing. When we talk about the yin and yang in our health practices, our wellness practices, we have to remember that this is not a matter of trying to mechanically control this process, but to optimize the scenario and the surroundings of that cell, of both of these cells, in order to ensure that you actually have fertilization, adequate fertilization. I can't think of a better representation of this sort of dark egg sitting in waiting, and then this little sperm full of energy just comes to solve the problem, comes swimming up real fast, and then they meet, and there's this explosion, and the two intermingle and create life. There's something really deeply important there that, you know, there are other practices like anthroposophic medicine that provides quite a bit more insight into how this process might be held and honored. In allopathic medicine, we just see it as a mechanical thing, but I could talk about that for hours, but I'd say that those are two areas that I think about yin and yang in quite a bit of detail on a minute-to-minute basis.
Well, in your profession, yeah, that's beautiful. So how about personally for you, Ryan? Anything you'd like to share with any challenges you have, maybe, you know, pulling out in more of your masculine, more of your feminine, maybe with your kids, or, you know, anything you want to share with that or the audience as to how you harmonize that yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what I would say is, you know, ultimately for me, it's all about balance, right? So how do I come to a balance between these sacred polarities in my life each day? And, you know, as a man, I think I'm naturally more masculine. And so, you know, what I've found in my own life that's really helped a lot is having structure within my day that allows me to tap in and allow my heart to lead the battle, right? And by battle, I mean just day ahead challenges, things like that. But, you know, my heart to me is very feminine, right? And so for me, I have this time in the morning where I actually like really dive into a heart space first and allow my heart to inform my day ahead. Because what I found is that for me, the feminine needs to come before the masculine, because if I allow the masculine to drive me, it's just going to attach onto any shiny object and just go to try to conquer the world. So for me, it's all about, you know, knowing how to allow my heart to lead the way so that my masculine can actually help support what my feminine is calling for. And so that's actually how I apply it in my everyday life. You know, things like meditating, mystery school rituals, breath work, you know, felt sense experiences, things like that are typical things I'm doing. Some of the challenges that I go through on a day-to-day basis, when we look into some of the challenges that, you know, I've found in my own day, it's really about just, you know, balancing those two energies in a way where I don't have one come so far ahead of the other one. And that can be a slippery slope. I think for any of us that are high achievers, it can be challenging, right, to balance that, because, you know, at say 7 p.m. when I have my end of day, how do I then wrangle that masculine energy to not try and keep conquering the world, right? So I have this thing I do every night called the recognition ritual, which is normally done with a volcano and some herbs. I don't interact with cannabis every day, but I'll interact with some herbs, and that will tell me like, okay, it's now time to get more into creative mode. And then I'll break out the guitar and allow my heart to kind of lead me to whatever feels right, instead of having a very strict schedule of, okay, now it's time to relax. So I'm going to relax really hard with all these things, right? It can be a little bit challenging to figure out how to balance that. And so that's been something I've worked through, and something I help work a lot of my clients through, because I think especially as men, and I imagine women have this too, but as men, it's like, how do we figure out how to balance this stuff? Most of us don't even know about it. We're never taught it in school. And so that's been some of the challenges and how it applies to me personally. And then professionally, really what I've found is that time blocking is so essential, because I have my times in my schedule where I'm like relaxing, maybe eating lunch or dinner or whatever like that. But then I have my go times. And so allowing my masculine and feminine energies to know when they can be in control allows my day to kind of be informed by that as well.
Wow, sounds very similar to mine. Ryan, thank you so much. And let's go to Nicole.
Okay, so to really get real with this podcast and tell you a little bit about the feminine, my challenge is going to be, I'm very low on estrogen. I'm on my moon. And so I'm going to be speaking really slow and just being in my heart and my words. And so I've had waves in my life of going from deep in my masculine to my feminine. Those of you who've heard my podcast with Amy before know that I was an exotic dancer for many years. Before that, I was, my parents were divorced early, and I was a tomboy. I think I was really seeking that connection with the masculine that was missing from my father when he left. And so I was this tomboy, and then I had to shift and become this expression of not just feminine, but the exotic maiden feminine. And then, like, patterns repeat through ancestral things. I had a daughter and became a single mother. And so my pain teacher brought me into the need to become the masculine. I oftentimes say, I brought home the bacon and I cooked it. And so for, 15 years of my daughter's life, I was pushing it hard to make sure that she had those two patterns met in her life, the validation and the container of the masculine, which I was not, and then also that soft mothering feminine. And as of recent, my partner of 7 years has just really shown up and become that container. But what's so beautiful about us, he was also a single father. So we both have this blend, like he'll cook for me and he'll, bring home the bacon. And it's so beautiful. And so my biggest challenge that I've found is learning how to soften my edges and to let myself be held and relax into that loving support, and just to let go of control, because that's kind of what the feminine is. We're the water that can spread over the land, and the masculine is the land that holds us and contains us. And I'm so grateful for these waves, because in coming into that partnership and into that relationship, we come into each other in wholeness. I don't need him to contain me. And sometimes I can support him in those ways that the masculine might support the feminine. My husband's very, he's a body worker and very energetically attuned. I sometimes joke that he's the yinnest man alive. And so it's so fun to dance with this other complete half of mine. And I'm continually working on like diving deeper into my feminine in these latter years.
Wow, so beautiful and inspiring, Nicole. Thank you so much. You guys always amaze me. The answers are just like, wow. I'm like, yep, that's why I had this person on the podcast panel. Yep, that's why I had her on the I just love it. Stuff that comes out of your mouths is so educational, inspiring for me as well.
Hey, I really hope you're enjoying the episode today. And I'm into holistic health and fitness, as I'm sure you are too, because you're here. Everybody these days seems to be into crystals and sacred geometry and essential oils and all this cool stuff that we're learning about Mother Nature and her beautiful medicinal gifts to us. Well, I bet you have a crystal in your house. I know I've got a whole bunch. So I have my friend Ross Newkirk here because he is the creator of Conscious Technologies, which produces a bunch of beautiful products that we can all have in our homes to help harmonize our environment, get us on higher levels of frequency and vibration so we can heal, create, light, feel good, de-stress, all that good stuff. And one of the things that he offers are things called the Vogel cut crystals. These are very unique crystals. They're not your average day crystal, folks, not the ones you're going to find at TJ Maxx or even Whole Foods. These are the Mercedes-Benz of crystals. And Ross is here to explain to us how his wife, who's also a healing practitioner, uses these crystals in her practice to help her patients heal and harmonize. Ross.
These crystals are called Vogel cut crystals, and Marcel Vogel was the one that came up with this design crystal. He spent years researching and studying crystals and found that crystals in their natural state and environment all have their own unique frequencies to them. But if you're able to cut a crystal a specific way, which is what our Vogel cut crystals are cut like, you can actually take and cohere and focus and amplify energy through these crystals. So just like a laser can focus a light beam, a crystal can be cut to focus and amplify energy. And so my wife at her center, the Awaken Wholeness Center in Rhode Island, she actually does work with crystals all the time. And she uses the crystals to actually cut energetic cords. She calls it cord cutting, and energetic cords that are basically attached to people, old programs and so forth. And she's able to utilize these tools to amplify energy and intention and remove and cut off these cords that are often holding people back. The specific angles, the growth angle of the actual quartz itself, the intention that's needed while cutting the crystal all go into creating these amazing, finely tuned instruments.
And Ross, how can people get their Vogel cut crystals, not to be mistaken for maybe a Google search that you might do, because there's a lot of knockoffs out there, crystals claiming that they're Vogel cut, because people in this industry, unfortunately, don't all have integrity, and they're just going to slap that name. It's like the organic label, and it's really not organic or something of that nature. So they might claim Vogel crystal, but you have to make sure you get a verified, certified Vogel cut master crystal creator guy, whatever the term is. Like, these are the real deal guys, and you'll know because they work as opposed to the ones that don't work. But Ross, how can they get theirs, and even at a discount?
Yeah, actually, we have them up on your website. You have them on your website, amyfournier.com. And if they enter Fit Amy TV 10, they can get 10% off their Vogel cut crystal. You get to choose between which Sherpa line bag that you would like with your crystal. They all come with a handmade bag that we make as well, and they're beautiful tools. So thank you.
Allison.
Yeah, so I loved what Nicole said, and Nathan and Ryan as well. It's so interesting how nuanced this topic is. And for me, I started out with being very comfortable in the masculine. The masculine felt safe to me. I felt like it was a sense of control that I could have in my life. And I followed this recently. I've kind of come to the insight where I've realized that it's about trust for me. So there was this distrust of the feminine when I was younger, through the relationship with my mother. And it was almost like I was standing back watching, the feminine, but not really ever jumping in, kind of being afraid to, because I just didn't feel like I could trust that. So that really translated to the trust in my own feminine. So I've, for a while, when I was starting to step into my feminine as an adult, it was a little bit awkward. And I also rejected parts of the masculine and within myself. And so, and criticized those parts of myself. But what I've realized is that there are parts of the masculine that I love so much. And, I'm in the household, I have 2 adult sons. I have a male dog and a husband. So I'm with masculine energy all the time. So I'm just used to being around it. And of course I created that because it felt safe to me, so that makes total sense. Now is a time for me that I'm like, okay, how do I step into my feminine and feel safe and trust that? And so for me, it's like almost taking that last like deep like exhale of your breath. Like that's literally what I've been able to do recently. And I didn't know I wasn't, fully breathing before, but I'm like, oh God, now I can fully relax because I'm trusting my feminine. And so, and that is through like just being seen, being heard, taking that practice to a whole new level, being creative, putting those projects out into the world, creating out of joy instead of the need to get, acknowledged or something that I need to get from other people, credit or anything like that. No competition. So just doing it out of the joy of doing it. And so that to me is like a good balance between the two. So, creating that structure like Ryan was talking about with my schedule, but then letting myself have a few days off so that I can just play and be in that creative energy for myself. So, for me, like a big trigger when I was going through all this was, and this is a big thing for people, the whole man spreading thing really triggers people. But what I looked into that deeper and I'm like, oh yeah, that used to trigger me because I was afraid to take up space myself. So I realized that, oh, okay. So if I start taking, the physical taking up space triggers people because they're not doing that from the inside. And I saw that within myself. So I said, oh my gosh, let me start taking up space and see how that feels. It might feel a little vulnerable, but I'm going to really step into this and be seen and heard in a different way and in a very vulnerable way, which when I was in my masculine more, I was really protective. I had an armor on myself. Like I didn't want people to see really who I was. And so now as I step more into my feminine, I'm like, yeah, this is me. Take it or leave it. I love it. I love me. And, I hope you do too, but it's up to you, so, that for me has been really the balance of just being comfortable with myself and showing up that way in the world.
Wow, fantastic. I mean, yeah, everything that you said, I relate to that as well with the issue of safety is always a requirement of really fully blossoming in either one and being yourself. I'm always saying that I'm grateful to have lived as long as I have because I feel like I have the luxury now to finally come into myself. I mean, I'm kind of a super late bloomer. I really wasn't who I really was for the whole, pretty much up until a few years ago, basically, which is why I had a midlife crisis of like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. Just trying to people please and all that. So I can relate to all that very much. And, you triggered something in me. Nathan, before we get to Sara, can we just circle back to you, Nathan? Because I love what you said, but was there anything just more with your, because, you're as a male physician and OBGYN, obviously dealing with women, and you're so in touch with your feminine in order to be such an effective doctor as you are. But just any personal challenges, and maybe you didn't say this in particular because you didn't want to share personal, and I don't want to go there if you don't want to, but just because you really every day have to really delicately dance between the two. So anything you want to share for insight for us in that regard before we go to Aleks and Sara?
Well, I think we've been conditioned to believe that the Western medical model is the right way to do it. When we talk about something like birth, we're not talking about a disease process. We're talking about a natural physiologic process. Pregnancy is not a disease. Birth is not a medical procedure. Yet it is, we've been conditioned to believe that everybody needs to go to the hospital to have this thing happen. Well, the hospital is the most obvious representation of a patriarchal hierarchy of anything in our entire society. There is a hierarchy whereby everybody has somebody above them that has the right answer. There's these orders that are passed down. Everything is, we try to control and manipulate nature in every way possible. It is the embodiment of the masculine through and through. Now, sometimes that's really great. If like, Sara got hit by a car, heaven forbid, We're not going to use biogeometry to get her, internal bleeding to stop. We got to get her to like a trauma surgeon. It's not the same with birth. Birth requires us to actually step back and sometimes just stand in awe of the process. That energy in and of itself actually facilitates a normal, beautiful childbirth, which is why so many women now are deciding to have home births. So for me, as somebody who was like, I don't want to be at war with nature. I don't want to have to live and operate within a patriarchal, and this patriarchy thing, I know people use that as a buzzword, but if somebody is saying, you don't know what's right for you, I do, because I have a long white coat, that is like paternalism through and through. That is the patriarchy. That is why we actually should push back. Sometimes that's helpful. In childbirth, it's not so helpful. So for me, working within the system, knowing that actually my patients or my clients, because they're not sick, they're not patients, these birthing women who came into my unit to be cared for, that they actually did better if I didn't even interrupt them, if I didn't talk to them, if I didn't look at them, if they didn't even know I was there, they were actually doing better. My C-section rate remains less than 5%, whereas the national average is 30 to 40%. So in other words, my training has taught me how to not use the skills that I trained so hard to acquire. So that puts you at odds for anybody out there who's in an industry that feels like that. You might just find that if you actually take a more feminine approach, which is to step back and to hold space for this natural process to unfold versus trying to control and manipulate nature, which we've seen in agriculture, we've seen it in our legislation, we've seen it in fertility. I mean, we see it everywhere. If you can step back and actually just hold space for the plants to grow, sometimes getting out of the way and stopping all the weeding and everything actually does quite a bit of good in the long term with higher yields in the agricultural system and for natural, uncomplicated, beautiful children coming out in the maternity care system. So I don't know if that's exactly what you're hoping for, but it's such a, I can't even find an example because like literally every single thing I think about in my professional and personal life is a balancing of these masculine and feminine energies, these sacred polarities.
Yeah, well, I just asked because, like everyone else on the panel, I feel like you do such a great job of walking that dance between the two. So just love tapping into how you guys actually do it is really helpful to me. Yeah, and I think what you said, not to get on a tangent, but it's, requires an amount of humility to be able to do what you said. And, just kind of like hands off, like, okay, just trust the weeds are a good thing. And also a comfortableness with uncertainty, and just the whole trust thing, which I think Nicole or Sara or someone had mentioned that, it's such an important thing. It's just trusting, hands off the wheel type thing. It's pretty scary for a lot of people, but that's where the feminine is, right? It's where she resides. So thank you, Nathan. Okay, let's go to Aleks.
Can you repeat the question that we are answering right now?
Yeah, we've just there's so many directions with those. Every one of those answers, I could have just gone on. I was trying not to do follow-up questions. Basically, how the masculine and feminine in you plays out in your life, how you harmonize the two, and if you have any challenges and any tips for us as to how you do that.
What a simple question. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, right. That's just it could be a whole show in itself for each of you. Mm-hmm.
Well, I seem to stay in my feminine a lot. It makes things run a lot smoother. It's a little bit more go with the flow. The masculine tends to be a little bit more cut and dry, not forceful, but a force. So I notice myself in things that need to be addressed in the masculine, like for example, the dogs. The dogs get addressed always in the masculine, almost always in the masculine when they're messing up. Like right now, I have a dog by my lap who does not read cues to go and lay down. And for example, then the kids, let's say I have to make a decision if the kids are acting out or they're upset about something before I even make any decisions. I have to go into myself and go, which one are they needing? Do they need a question answered? Do they need to be redirected? Do they need space? And then depending on what the answer is, I go from there. So sometimes, our oldest will be having anxiety going on and everything's flying around, and it's not the right time for my masculine to be giving directions as to what she needs to do. And I may be in that state and I say a couple of things like, hey, try this, try this, try it, nothing works. And then I start going into my feminine and asking questions like, are you feeling this way? I'm guessing that this is happening inside of you right now, or I'm noticing this. And then usually that stops all the confrontation. And then in other situations where, like, let's say safety is involved, where they might get hurt, or if, you know, my youngest is kind of a little monkey, so she will be doing something that's potentially dangerous, and I'm watching her, letting her be in her place. And then if there's something that's a little bit out of the ordinary, let's say she's using a knife and she's 7, she knows how to cut things up, she makes smoothies, she uses blenders, almost always unsupervised. And because we trust her, I taught her really well, and Sara taught her really well. So, but then at sometimes she'll be, when she's by herself, she's great because she's focused. And then at times where we're in the room or something's happening, she'll be looking away. And that's when it's like, hey, pay attention. It's like, oh, it heightens everything up. So then because there's danger involved, she could lose a finger, she could get hurt, she could, you know, cut herself, whatever the idea is. So it has to be a well-discerned response. And does my response, do the people in the room deserve the response I'm about to give? And it, in my heart, it always comes from love. It doesn't always come out that way through my face or through my tone or through, but it's something that I'm constantly working on and going back and forth in my mind constantly. And sometimes, you know, the quote, well, wise man once said nothing. And I say that to discern in my mind to know how to bring myself back into a healthy state of a masculine presence, because my dad's dad left their family and he had to kind of shape up and work real hard, and everything was kind of I call it like shotgun parenting, where he found out about something, he'd come in the room real quick, blast me full of information that he thought in a very loud voice, and then go back to doing what he needed to do. And so it was like, can we have a conversation? No? Okay, I guess I'll process what you told me about myself. And so going into that silence and going, okay, are these my thoughts? I'm upset that she, you know, one of my kids yelled at me. I'm upset about this. Should I be upset about this? Are these someone else's thoughts? Are these my thoughts? Is this society's thoughts? Is the collective conscious? This is how men should, you know, this is how father should be talked to. And is this petty? And so I have to discern all of those things. And if it's something that I end up landing on that I feel needs to be addressed, then I address it. And if it's something that's either conditioning or societal, you know, unconscious programming, and I found out it's not something that I want to participate in, then I let it go and I wait for the feelings to wear off, because ultimately that's what's happening is I'm overwhelmed because of this input that came in. My brain processed it through a condition and then was about to fire the trigger back as to how I should respond as a man of society. And even though that's not how I actually want to respond. So it takes me a second, and I'm still practicing it every day. And I feel like I'm getting better at it. My wife will tell you if I'm doing good at it. I'm sure she will.
Well, what you're describing is you're bringing conscious awareness. You're not just trigger reacting. You're consciously choosing how to respond, you know? So
That shows a lot of maturity. Good for you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it takes a long time. Been taking Sara and I have almost been together going on 8 years now. Yeah, so I'm stubborn and I have a stubborn process, and I'm finally at that stubborn place where I'm like stubbornly on this process now, and I'm not going to stop until it gets refined and refined and refined. And so I'm sure I'm letting go of other things that I need to focus on as well, though this is consuming my mind a lot, is how I respond to my kids, even to my mom is here. My mom's been here for a month. It's those little things that how my father responds to her versus how I choose to respond to her. And so if there's repeating behavior and I've witnessed a sharper response the more it repeats, versus how I respond to my kids is maybe the same tone. It's like, hey, let me remind you. And then so now whenever, you know, my mom might repeat something, even though I've saw this masculine presence treat my mom one way. Well, I get a chance to treat her another way, and then show my dad how to, like, hey, it's okay. We can be calm. Like, you can repeat it. It's okay. You're not going to blow up. Like, it's fine. Like, even if it's 10 times, 20 times, it's at least, the way you treat people is important. And I get to do that through my words, through my actions, without saying any words. I hope I answered the question. Kind of.
Oh, you sure did. Super practical. I think the everyday examples are going to be very helpful for people, especially with parenting, right? So thank you. All right, let's round off that question with Sara.
Yeah, I'm surprised, Aleks, you didn't use the example of clubbing me over the head and dragging me by the hair to go have sex with you. It's gotten a lot more gentle over the years, as he's learned.
Well, I think you remember that more than I do.
Well, yeah, so we are in a house with 3 daughters, and then there's me. So Aleks came into the picture with, there's 4 women of all age ranges. So I always say, like, the emotional ranges are constantly in flux all the time around him. So going from only child and bachelor to overnight dad and father of 3 overnight, and with also an older woman who's evolved through more life experiences. Just like, it was like someone shot him through, just this speed tunnel of like he handled it pretty well, I would say.
Nathan, I was going to say, Nathan knows what's up. He sees people give birth all day. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, I would say that I can see that. So, I mean, the challenges for me, I'm going to try and keep it short. I separated I guess you could say the imago self, separated from the feminine very, very early as a child. When I started getting sick at the age of 7, and just from there were just a lot of, crises and experiences and challenges throughout my youth into my teen years that led to me perfectly, I in hindsight, just over identifying with the masculine self-image, and in an almost very unhealthy way, and from a wounded way. And then I think the years where I tried to reconnect with my feminine, I ended up right before my first marriage, actually blocking all of those years out. I mean, they were erased from memory. I just recalled those years. It was about 4 years, Aleks, I think, during a ceremony together where they flooded all in. And I realized, like, there was this girl that I had just completely lost touch with, that as I started to regain a lot of these memories, I was shown of a lot about this feminine part of my soul that was a great part of my life, a pivotal moments of my life. And she's cool, and I just erased her in order to survive and carry on through this marriage and this relationship. So we are in a house with 3 daughters, and then there's me. So Aleks came into the picture with, there's 4 women of all age ranges. So I always say, like, the emotional ranges are constantly in flux all the time around him. So, going from only child and bachelor to overnight dad and father of 3 overnight, and with also an older woman who's evolved through more life experiences. Just like, it was like someone shot him through, just this speed tunnel of like he handled it pretty well, I would say.
Nathan, I was going to say, Nathan knows what's up. He sees people give birth all day. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, I would say that I can see that. So, I mean, the challenges for me, I could just, I'm going to try and keep it short. I separated I guess you could say the imago self, separated from the feminine very, very early as a child. When I started getting sick at the age of 7, and just from there were just a lot of, crises and experiences and challenges throughout my youth into my teen years that led to me perfectly, I in hindsight, just over identifying with the masculine self-image, and in an almost very unhealthy way and from a wounded way. And then I think the years where I tried to reconnect with my feminine, I ended up right before my first marriage, actually blocking all of those years out. I mean, they were erased from memory. I just recalled those years. It was about 4 years, Aleks, I think, during a ceremony together where they flooded all in. And I realized like there was this girl that I had just completely lost touch with, that as I started to regain a lot of these memories, I was shown of a lot about this feminine part of my soul that was a great part of my life, a pivotal moments of my life. And she's cool, and I just erased her in order to survive and carry on through this marriage and this relationship. And I'm still working on, embodying, embracing, reinforcing that lost part of me, or that part that I abandoned, while also trying to heal other complexes of the soul where I am, or soul complexes, I should say, of the feminine. Because by the end of that 14-year marriage, I was in crisis mode, my identity crisis, financial crisis, health crisis, career crisis. And so I really had to pull all the masculine energy back in to survive and take care of my girls and take care of myself and pull everything up, because I was the only person I had. And in comes Aleks, just marching in, just, jolly, little Peter Pan kind of essence about him, just gonna save the world and heal people, and life is great. And I'm over here like, what are you fucking talking about? Like, And so the two of our energies coming together was like, you look back and you're like, well, duh, because the unconscious parts or the unconscious feminine of his soul was exactly what I was able to receive when he projected it. So it was so easy to attract, and vice versa. The, unconscious, I guess, image of my masculine is really what his was able to receive when I projected it, because that is what he needed and what he was working to heal and bring in and embody. So here we were thinking, no, this is who I am, when really the truth was, no, I am you and you are me. And everything we projected was just a projection of each other. And so the first 4 years of our relationship, or 3 years, I guess, well, Ari came when, I would say that at least the first 2 years of our relationship, it was just the two of us trying to outwit each other, when the funny thing is like, it was just the two souls coming together and just laughing, like, what are you guys doing? You're the same thing. And when we finally recognized that, it became such an easy dance of like, when Aleks is more in the masculine, I tend to very naturally fall into the feminine, and vice versa. When I'm, go, action, momentum, drive, focus, he is very naturally falling into the feminine. So it's such a natural energetic sharing of the space where, you know, it's almost unconscious now at this point of, you know, I'm focusing, I'm doing something, or I'm anxious, or, you know, I'm worried about this, or, oh my God, I'm dealing with a crisis with my other daughter. And he just falls into like more of the nurturing and the soft place, and then vice versa. So we're always tilting to harmonize each other. And it took us a while to get here, but the journey to get here was, we had to take that journey to get here. It was not always easy, dealing with, you know, my middle child almost dying, and the oldest was in the hospital, and financial hardships, and being a mother of a brand new baby while the older two really needed me. And then I've got this new relationship with this guy, and we're trying to get our practice to thrive and also get to know each other. And it was like everything you could throw into this recipe to make it probably the worst thing that could come out, actually created like the most beautiful meal, I guess you could say, in the end. So the challenge I still continue to face is I never really had an influence of what a balanced and healthy feminine is, because anytime when I was younger, I would express my feminine, that was like hushed down, like that's not appropriate. You know, being raised in evangelical Lutheran environment, the feminine was put into a very, very small box, and with very limited options, you know, creativity and expression, and all of those kinds of things were like, no. And so it was just very limited. It's like ladylike, you say these things, you talk this way. It's all about being ladylike and proper and appropriate. And I never really had that kind of influence. So when I started wanting to reconnect with the feminine, here I had this like sociocultural idea or view that meant I needed to wear more jewelry and makeup and show cleavage and maybe some dresses and dance around on my tippy toes or something. And so I struggled with that for a while, because that really just is not my personality at all. And so I thought, what is wrong with me that I can't just be feminine? And it took that a lot of healing some of the mother complexes and working with a lot of the masculine wounding that I had to understand that there's so many colors and expressions of the feminine that don't just fit into the, you know, the dainty ballerina dancer box of what it is to be a woman. And my expression of femininity is very much could be seen on the outside as masculine, but it is truly, it is my feminine expression. My mind, my creativity, and I have to like Ryan, he, you know, like he has to balance things out. Otherwise he gets so lost in things. That's why every day I wake up and I paint. So I have to have something like it grounds me into that feminine creative force. So I wake up and I'm painting sometimes hour and a half every morning. And that has been a big life-changing, you know, heart-changing, thought-changing, you know, soul-changing experience for me that, you know, now I integrate that into all my work with my clients.
Well, you know, that's really great. I'm glad that you said that practical application, Sara, because I found that, like Ryan and you and probably everybody else, you know, to balance this is what we're talking about is the mental alchemy. You know, in the Hermetic principles, they talk about one of the principles, the fourth one, is the principle of polarity, and the principle of gender is the seventh of the seven. And I think it's in the fourth, in the one on gender, they talk about how, like you said with you and your husband, Aleks, it's all a continuum of the same thing. You know, when you're bouncing off one end of the pole to the other, it's still the same thing. And it's really that art of balancing between the two. But to know what perhaps is your pole that might be deficient, for lack of a better word, or one that you want to strengthen or boost up a little bit, and maybe putting in your everyday life, putting it right in your calendar as a priority to do, like first or always or regularly or whatever, to help bring that up. I had one guest on my show, Liz Kelly, who's a real expert on women's studies, and she talks about, her term was the feminine comes first. And to me, that just like hit, because I go immediately, I wake up in the morning, the whole to-do list and what do I have to do today? But I started a new thing. Like, I like your idea of doing the art first, which is the ultimate in the feminine, as long as you stay in your feminine while you do it and don't judge your art, which I learned the hard way. But for me, it's like dancing. Like, it just put on music and move my body. I have to get in my body because my masculine, my mind, as Paul will say, is so damn strong. It's probably what's enabled me to survive my life, for sure. So I've learned to now, instead of berate myself for it, be grateful for myself and compassionate that it's that strong will that I had that enabled me to still be alive today. But now it's time to be like, okay, it's safe for you to now take the back seat. You don't have to drive anymore and be more in your body. It's safe. So the dancing. So I like your art example. Again, I just really want to make this as practical as possible from you guys who I think of as experts in healthy lifestyle. How can they really make this stuff real? So maybe art first thing. Did you want to just do a follow-up on that, Sara? And then we'll just go quickly to Allison. And I do want to just then pivot to something very important before I let everybody go today, before we, one more important question. So.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's really how I mean, I wasn't consciously thinking feminine first, but the reason I have that ritual is to know that I am coming from the feminine.
Yeah.
And then expanding from there. Yeah.
And you scheduled it in as a priority and it happens. Great. Allison, did you have a quick comment on that?
Yeah, I wanted to highlight what Sara said about, she mentioned the aspects of the feminine, and there's different aspects of the masculine too. But I did not realize when I was first diving into my feminine, because I criticized myself, like she shared about not being feminine. Like I was like, oh, I'm not feminine. Like, what's wrong with me? It's because there's so many different aspects of those feminine parts of us that we aren't taught, that are really an expression of the feminine. And that's really greatly demonstrated in the 13, is it the 13 moon goddess archetypes, where, you've got the Lady of Communion is different than the Kali, the destroyer. It's just like, there's just different, like, the feminine is messy, actually. There's a, and like, a lot of times I think, oh my God, like I'm being too masculine, but sometimes it was really feminine and I didn't realize it. So I think that that's important for us to realize too. There's like all these different expressions of it, and there's no wrong way. But it's accepting those parts of yourself and loving them. And then like Sara talks about, practicing that and honoring that within yourself.
Such an important point, Allison. Thank you. We talked about that a little bit in part one, that the audience can just go hit that part one. I believe it's episode 139. But like you said, and Aleks had mentioned in that episode, the Amazons, were they masculine? They had a ritual that they couldn't marry or partner until they killed a man. That was part of their ritual, like their culture. So I don't know, that sounds pretty harsh to me. So yeah, the feminine is dynamic and complex, as is the masculine. It all is, it's all nuance. But let's go ahead and pivot, because I'm just looking at the time. I would like to go around again and ask you guys, okay, this might be a little bit controversial for the audience and we might trigger some people, but I would love to know if you guys feel comfortable and confident to give an honest answer. What are your thoughts on what's going on in current society with the boundaries of traditional masculine feminine roles being blurred? And there's talk now that that men in our culture are becoming soft and women are becoming hard. That the genders are getting blurred, and I think Nicole had mentioned, you bring home the bacon, you fry it up in the pan, you're expected to do it all. is there a time and a place where in a relationship, for however it works for you and your partner, it's better to have a role so you kind of know, okay, I take care, I don't know, the father takes care of the kids or does the laundry and this and that, and the mother mows the grass, and it's not traditional, but it works for them. But so lack of a better example, something like that. So what are your thoughts on society and people being confused and feeling not only pressure to be both and awesome at both? Is that practical? Is it smart? And what are your thoughts on, again, the blurring of the lines, therefore leading to each of them weakening their power and their effectiveness? So why don't we start, let's see, I don't want to lose place. Why don't we start with Ryan, and we're going to follow my little Brady Bunch squares here on the Zoom. So we'll start with Ryan, please. Yeah.
You know, I think what I've seen overall is that when you go from polarity to polarity, right? Like we've seen like, oh, it's very good to be masculine, right? Like the world has really, you know, kind of rewarded masculine energy. What has been known as masculine energy. Because I think as we're illuminating here, it's not as easy as being able to say masculine is this and feminine is that. But these qualities of like hard work, you know, productivity, all these things have been rewarded for so long that now we're starting to get this swing the other way of super feminine, right? Like kind of like everything's just what it is, right? There's no real way to define anything. And I think that this is naturally what happens when we keep going from polarity to polarity. But like the Tao talks about, essentially, right, the middle way is the way, right? Being able to say, well, hey, maybe you do not want to abide by the traditional societal laws of what it means to be a man or a woman. That's great, you know, but at the same time, being able to understand that, you know, in looking at masculine and feminine energies and how they interact, being able to actually say like, okay, what is conducive here for being able to actually allow masculine and feminine energy to coexist, right? And to be, because I think that if we start to have an area where we're undefined, like that movie, What is a Woman, right? These kind of things, you know, like I think like when we start to get so into the weeds about like not being able to define something, I think it actually confuses us and makes us actually know what these are less than we did before. So I think overall, that's kind of how I feel what's happening. I think it's a natural thing as I see from polarity to polarity, but I also think it comes with a lot of challenges present within it with regards to, you know, society just becoming ultra confused. I mean, when you really look at it, I think society is confused in a lot of ways right now. And, you know, I think that one of the things that makes it harder is, you know, people just kind of going back and forth on what these like pretty classic things are. It's almost like saying like, well, that plus symbol, that now actually means subtraction, and the subtraction symbol actually means addition, right? It's like we're starting to get to such foundational levels of understanding and trying to tear them apart without really knowing what the better way is yet. You know, it's like how people say down with the banks. It's like, cool, what better system do you have to make sure people don't starve to death? And I think right now people are just trying to burn everything. And I think that when you try to do that without having some better way to move forward, I think that's when things get challenging. And I think that's what a lot of people are feeling right now is the lack of that structure. Because again, we're moving more towards feminine, which isn't innately bad, but we're losing some of that masculine structure. So I think there needs to be this Tao approach of the middle way where we can say, okay, let's flow, but let's have some structure to how we flow, if that makes sense.
Ryan, you always give such fantastic insight. I just think
thank you. Wish my camera would behave.
It's okay.
But...
we got your audio, and we won't be able to get a clip of that, but it was
Perfect.
brilliant. But everything you say is brilliant. So
Thank you. That was fantastic contribution. Of course, let's go to, let's see. I have my Brady Bunch is moving around. I don't want to miss anybody, but can we go to Nicole, and I'll try to go up and over.
So I tend to always like see the beauty and positive in all the things. And when you ask this question, I'm like, how healthy is that? How healthy is it that we've been stuck in this masculine polarity for years? And as we're shifting, we're starting to see everyone maybe not know exactly what their role is. And as they're trying to figure that out, they're learning both roles. Just like Ryan said, the Tao, like finding that middle way, in my opinion, I think it makes relationships healthier. If I have strength in my feminine, but I'm also showing up with that piece of the masculine. I show up whole. I show up whole without neediness, which kind of eliminates this codependency that we see in so many relationships. And I think that for me, finding that other partner that is also whole makes it so that we can dance together and we can dance apart, right? There's that, I believe it's a Rumi quote that says, you know, stand firm apart and let the winds of heaven dance between you. And so I am my own vessel. I complete me with the masculine and with the feminine. And then knowing that my partner is that whole vessel as well, we come together because we want to and not because we need to. I think that we all should learn pieces of these roles and become the whole vessel. And, you know, regardless, you know, if you're learning how to express the masculine and you're in the feminine, you're never going to change the chromosome that you were born with, right? But how many lifetimes have we had as chromosomes? And what is that doing to our DNA, and how can we express that? And so I really think it can be healthy if we take a look at it that way.
I think that's fantastic. And, you know, I had heard it said somewhere along the line that the most captivating and enchanting and interesting people are those that are really strong in both polarities, that they really are in touch with their feminine, but they're also really in touch with their masculine, and they bring them both to the equation, to the relationship. So your answer kind of made me think of that, because, I mean, I don't know a lot of people that are strong in both of them. I mean, I don't know if you guys do, but is it safe to say it's kind of rare, or hopefully it's growing? I don't know, but I guess it's ideal. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that.
I think I know, you know, Aleks and I have a good tribe, and we know some, you know, men, I think Aleks, you'd agree, that are pretty rooted and centered, you know, just really, I would say, grounded in a very healthy sense of their masculine with their and their role they play in their family and as leaders and in their careers. And you know, I have a couple of women in my life that, well, I have a lot of women. I think I showed you on the last episode. I have a, you know, sort of like a paper where I keep all of the women of all that sort of represent different feminine aspects that I want to, you know, that I admire and would love to learn how to embody more of. So I think I know a lot of women, a lot of men that are grounded. You know, Nicole is one of them. Just such a healthy, grounded in her feminine, but you know, I've also seen her teach, and so I've seen that masculine come out, and it's beautiful, you know, like, so I can see, I do have those people in my life. I do think that it's growing, but I also see the majority of the population are not, evolved. They don't have the integral conscious development. I think that we're all maybe in our hopeful minds talking about, where, you know, the oneness and the blending is a beautiful thing. But I think when you're talking about taking away words and language and ideas from society in general, you're talking about taking that away from those who are not able to consciously understand the full impact, because they haven't truly met themselves. They haven't come into full understanding of who they are. And then you go younger and younger into children, you know, 2, 3, 4 years old, even younger than that. And you're not, you know, there's this sort of a theme almost going on now of, let's not indoctrinate our children with this whole masculine feminine thing. It's like, huh? I mean, you know, isn't that the point, so that they can find out who they are? And then that's the developmental part it's like, one of the only rites of passage we have as human beings anymore is that individuation process, individuating from the parents. And so what are we individuating from if we don't know who the fuck we are? I mean, like, so it's like taking that away. But outside of that, when you know who you are and you've danced with both sides, that, as Nicole said, I mean, that's beautiful. And I agree with that. I think that is wonderful. And there are more people who are stepping up and growing into more of that integral conscious states, but that's not the majority of the population, I would say.
Mhm.
And I would say that the sort of washing away or blending of polarities, I can't foresee all the future, but I do see how that can, well, if this happens, then like, it's like the dominoes or I just look forward ahead of, like, if that continues to happen amongst a majority of population of people that don't know themselves, I don't know what's going to happen.
Mhm. Well, I think it's kind of to what Ryan had mentioned. I think it was Ryan who said, what happens is right now in 2023, culture has swung back to the side of the feminine polarity excessively to try to balance out, and that's what it does. It's just an arc. It's like a ship that swings, and it's trying to find the median because we're in the middle of the Great Awakening. So now it's like the cards are thrown up, and now they're going to land. It's like, okay, now they're going to balance out and find the Tao, the middle way, which is the way. Otherwise, we're not going to be here to have any more podcasts, that's for sure. So I think that's what's happening exactly, Sara. Aleks, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I was going to mention our friends too, and how, there's not very many spaces where men, let's say, feel safe to do both. I mean, you could be gay and then you're free to express whatever you would like because there's no expectation of you, you're labeled as gay and then you're good. Like, that's it. Do whatever you want. Be as flamboyant or as, be a lumberjack, be a flamboyant lumberjack, whatever you want. But, and when the sense of, if you're not in that category, there's not very many healthy examples of men kissing other men or kissing other men's wives because there's no boundaries. So there's not very many, like, because I kiss, like, Sara gets kissed by all of our friends and I kiss all of our friends to say hello. And because there's this understanding that we have respect and boundaries for each other, that it's a safe space to show love. And there's not very many examples of that in the world, because you see, either hyperinflation of masculine, hyperinflation of feminine, and it's distorting all these illusions. Now you have, men arguing with women about how dumb they are and their values and trying to undercut them, and women undercutting men. And when you step back, how many, exactly like you're saying, how many safe examples are there where you could be both, you can express both, because as little boys and in watching shows and, like, what are you afraid of? You're afraid of dropping the soap. You're afraid of going to jail. You're afraid of showing affection to your male friends, and then, or you'll be called gay. And then what's wrong with being gay? And now you have this whole other complex that's distorting itself. So you put yourself in this tiny little box. And why I bring all this up is, like, around, the tribe we have, there is none of that. Be who you are, and no one's judging you for being feminine or being masculine, or or me being feminine, dancing around the house. And then at the same time, like what happened a little bit ago, where the kids are running up the hallway and I turned around and I was like, hey, Sarah's like, oh, you that was kind of hot, but that doesn't come out very often, because I don't need it to. So it's one of those things where we need people like who we have here to be around more people to show them, hey, it's okay. You can show your affection the way you show it, as long as there's respect and boundaries and no manipulation. But that's what I think is not very common, is like, oh, you hang out with girls. So then there's YouTube videos of, like, oh, can you really have a male or a female friend that you don't want to have sex with? And it's like, that's the argument. Or, does a woman need to be in the house and or can she work, or is that masculinity affecting her children in her life? It's like, that's what we're arguing about. How about we go back to ourselves? So and be safe for other people. But I think the panel here is already doing that for other people, is showing them that you could do both and it's perfectly okay.
I love it. Great. Okay, let's go to Allison, please.
Yes, I really agree with every perspective I've heard. And I think that, there's a couple of things that are going on here. One is a lot of this information that's being put out in the media is meant to confuse people. And I think that's for purposes of separation and actually stifling evolution. And I agree with Ryan. We are there's a pendulum shift because we have to go through these extreme things in order to, feel into the masculine, really extremely, feel into the feminine, really extremely, feel all the edges there of like the unhealthy, healthy. What are those like, what I think is missing is, like what Sara was saying, the rite of passage. So like Paul Chek talks about, I remember him talking years ago about how we have to explore the I, then that comes the you, and then comes the we. But what's being taught to younger people is to skip the I and go straight to the we. And so if you haven't really developed your sense of identity yet, like Sara was talking about as a child, and it's confusing during those years, then it's going to create so much confusion as an adult. You're just going to, it's going to impair your evolution or your consciousness. And so I think in a way it's a bit of a hijack there. But I also think there is a healthy perspective to it all, because we are needing to explore both in these ways so that we can come together and bring the unification of the two. So it's really exploring both and then honoring yourself. So learning how to figure out what you want to, how you want to express that. So if you want to stay at home and you want to watch the kids and you want to cook, cool. That if that makes you happy, do that. It's this judgment from society that people really get triggered by to feel like they have to do this or they have to fit in some kind of box. But the reality is you don't have to fit into anything. You can create your life any way you want. So there's no particular box of feminine or masculine that we had to fit into. But I think where people go wrong is they do what they think society wants them to do, or they don't want to be judged. So they'll act a certain way. And so that's, they're limiting themselves in their exploration and what they really want to be doing or how they want to be expressing themselves. So I think that's where the problem occurs there with this whole thing. I think it's totally amazing if people want to express themselves anyway. If you feel like, as a man, you want to be more feminine, be more feminine, but don't do it because you feel like society wants you to do that or it's the right thing to do. There has to be a deeper purpose there for yourself. So just be yourself.
Great. I love it. Okay, let's round up that question with Nathan, please.
Yeah, there's so many. This is why I love this tribe, like my social circles, because there's a lot of curiosity around it. And I'll try to hit something, maybe take a slightly different angle here. But I think that the conversations around these complex topics are so necessary. And I love what everybody said. So I'll start by saying I think Matt Walsh's documentary was a pile of shit. I thought it did not do justice for the complexities of this conversation. We've been talking now for collectively 3 hours on sacred polarities, and we're going to minimize it to an end scene where she's like, what's a woman? Well, this woman needs a man to open the jar or whatever. And it's like, ha ha ha, like it was just a bullshit movie. Having said that, I do think that when we start to mix biological sex with gender issues, I think it's fraught with issues. So I'm not even going to go there. But I do think it's important for anybody out there who's thoughtful about male and female, woman and man, whatever, to remember that it is still incumbent on us men to be reminded on a minute-to-minute basis that without women giving birth to babies, you cannot give birth to a baby if you don't have a uterus and functioning ovaries. Like it just doesn't work. So let's just look biologically there. It is been thrust upon the women in our lives to not only carry the babies, grow the babies, nurture the babies, and really kind of keep our households in order because of their, my wife has an incredibly high emotional intelligence quotient, whatever that even means. She just has this ability to hold the ship afloat. And so while I'm doing, fixing, she does somehow keep the glue in all of our lives together. These little girls are being raised with a very conscious, intentional mother and father. But I don't compare to the bond that she has with these girls because she carried them inside of her body for 9 to 10 months. So as a society, we can blur the lines all we want with fancy language and come up with new academic terms, and we can philosophize all we want. Right now, we have a society that it demands women to not only grow our babies, give birth to our babies, and breastfeed our babies to keep our species alive. We now also demand that they're the CEOs, that they're this and that. And I think I touched on this in our first recording, but it is not a problem for a woman to be the every woman. I think that that's fantastic. But I also don't think we really honor when women want to embrace motherhood. They want to embrace the fact that they are now responsible for growing this baby and treating their bodies like a temple. That's not enough for anybody anymore. Now you also have to be a breadwinner. You also have to have a successful podcast and an entrepreneur. Why isn't it enough that a woman just wants to do the things that she is uniquely capable of doing, which is growing a baby, giving birth naturally, maybe in her home or whatever, and then breastfeeding her baby? Like, heaven forbid we see her nipple. So these are like age-old problems that we haven't even worked out. And now we're starting to blur the lines around gender language and whatnot. It's like, guys, we don't even respect women for being women, let alone a woman who's also so in touch with her masculine. So I think we are way, 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 way behind in how we are viewing the actual beauty and sacred nature of what women bring. And I mean biological women bring into our society. In a beehive, I may have brought this analogy up last time, but in a beehive, the little worker bees are supporting the queen who's giving birth to more worker bees, male and female. That's enough in their society. For us, it's like, hey, if you want to stay home and be a housewife, like, you're now lesser than the CEO. And I think that that's a huge problem. Before we step further and we want to try to talk about gender roles and trans rights and all of that, which is also important. Like, what about the woman who has a baby? The man ditches out and now she's left without any social services to raise a baby by herself, scrapping together coins from under the couch to try to make her rent. Like, we have no respect for women. In fact, if you're a professional woman, you have to be given a lactation room in the airport or a lactation room at a major medical conference. One of my colleagues might be in this experience, for her to breastfeed her baby, because it would be so untoward for her to be breastfeeding in front of a crowd of people, because society views that as icky, gross, doesn't belong here or whatever else. So until we can get that in order, I'm not so sure I have much interest in many other corollaries that have grown out of this. And then add in everything you guys have already said, and we have a hell of a Gordian knot that can't be explained in a 90-minute thoughtless documentary that is just meant to provoke people.
Yeah. This is amazing, Nathan, because that's a perspective I never really considered in viewing everything and listening to everything that's going on in culture right now. That, wait a second, because the whole guise is that this is to help, equalize everybody and give everybody the opportunity and permission to be whatever they want. Men can be women, men can have babies, women can run businesses or, slay dragons, whatever. But what I hear you saying is, well, wait a minute, we hadn't even valued women to begin with, like to be a woman, never mind have anyone claim they can be a woman. I don't know, am I hearing you right? Because that's just an interesting step back. Like, let's just put this in perspective for a second, okay? Like, we're getting way ahead of everything. Let's just bring it back, dial it in.
Yeah, I think the feminine has been inextricably linked with nature for as long as written history permits us to understand. And I may have gone into this in our previous recording, but as our cosmologies have changed, women have been, through the church and state, have been repressed, drive them down underground because they have this special magic. If we could actually embrace and honor that magic, imagine how our world would look. But instead, women have had to try to show their value by taking on the quote masculine. You don't need to be masculine. You are so valuable, not just because you give birth. Like, women are fucking awesome. And like, we have no respect for what women actually can do. So as our cosmologies have changed and we've allowed the church and state to tell us what should be valuable, which is in the media right now, we're all playing a part of this every time we flip through Instagram. As long as we're willing to do that, and not to mention going to those box office movies where women, like there was an article from the New York Times, Britt was her name, Britt Marling. She was the filmmaker. She was in the show The OA. She wrote a really, really great piece that said, I'm tired of playing the female lead, because the female lead is you're tall, you're thin, you've got big boobs, and you're out slaying dragons. Like, what about being a female lead who's just inextricably linked with her own nature and being so proud that she menstruates and she can grow babies? Like, fuck all the men. You guys can't do that. That should be enough. But even Hollywood perpetuates this bizarro narrative that we can't seem to shake. And until we can shake that, I'm not so sure we're going to make any progress in any of these other sort of things that have come up in our conversations.
Well, it just makes me think about valuing all the roles in a tribe, you know, like the guy who makes the swords is just as valuable as the woman who's washing the laundry and cleaning the armor in battle, and as valuable as the women in the garden picking the berries, as valuable as, you know, the midwife, as valuable as the chief. You know, like everyone has their role in a society and they're all respected in a way. So that's kind of what I'm hearing you say. That's such an important, beautiful point that I hope the audience just kind of meditates on. Thank you, Nathan. Nicole, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I'm over here fist pumping in the corner.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, oh, so I was the woman that was scraping the change and putting myself through school and working. I put myself into adrenal fatigue at 30 years old with my 4-year-old little girl, and there was nobody to make it happen. This is how I got into holistic health. I had to heal myself because I had to be there. And so I hear you, and I just, it brings emotion to me, because the support that's needed to play that role, and it's not honored. The amount of work that it takes to be the breastfeeder and be up all night and then have to do it again tomorrow. And so thank you for sharing that piece, because there's so many women out there that are in that space. And then the other piece is that a lot of those who are able to give their whole lives to just being mothers, there's this point where the archetype of the mother starts to fade, and then they go, but who am I? And I just had my daughter move out, which I mentioned on the last podcast, and everyone's like, how are you doing? And I'm like, so good. She's so well established in her life and her body, and she's flying, and I'm so proud and happy of her. And I have mine. I have mine that I've been developing throughout this time too. And so I've been coaching a lot of these women, like, what do I love now? Where am I? And so as I'm listening to this, I'm almost thinking that the masculine and feminine is like contractions. Sometimes we have to contract into that masculine push. And then once we've done that push, we get to soften and be the feminine. And then I think that we crave that contraction if we've been too soft and in the feminine. And I just would like to end with the concept that I like to break the norms, and I was whipping my nipple out in every airport I could.
Free the nipple, Nicole.
I was feeding my baby. And this is where food comes from. And if it pushes the norm, you know, I was thinking earlier, I'm like, did I just tell everybody I was on my moon on a podcast? I'm like, yeah, these conversations, these things, they need to become the norm so we can begin to honor
Yeah.
and understand. And so Nathan, you really spoke to my heart.
And I'll add that it's actually, we're in the dark moon right now when we're recording this. So it's a dark moon phase, which is kind of ironic that you're in your moon. So you're right on sync with Mother Nature, Nicole.
And that moon actually is closer to the earth than it has been in 1,300 years. It's a very powerful moon. Yeah.
Wow. So the theme of this podcast is going to be about everyone letting go, whatever it is that they don't need anymore, just letting it go.
Yeah. So thank you so much for bringing this, Amy, and bringing this conversation.
Please, thank you for saying yes. I know how crazy busy you all are, and I know we're getting toward the end here, but Aleks, did you want to chime in on that?
Nathan was talking about how women can't even whip their nipple out, and they have to have a lactation room. And you know, I already mentioned that I spend so much time in my feminine, and I'm working on like how to integrate that mostly in my day-to-day life. But I will say, I remember one time I can 100% say always gets me in my masculine is when Ari was born and Sarah's breastfeeding and in public, and she's kind of like, oh, you know, and this is the beginning of our relationship, so I can see where, you know, her previous experiences brought her to this, and like then her families, but like there's one point where I'm like, nope, let her kid eat. And it was like, I wish a motherfucker would say something. I will throw you into a toilet. I'm like, she's gonna eat. If you don't like it, you're gonna get thrown out. Like you want to go eat in the toilet, you eat in the toilet. And no, and because that energy was like, it was like
that's the divine masculine. To me, that's the divine masculine. Like, I want to do the fist pump with that. Like, yeah, protect your woman and your baby.
Yeah, it's like, it was
like I would be breastfeeding Ari, and people would walk by, and they'd be
awesome.
And Aleks, you got a fucking problem? You know, like really loud.
The chest inflates. Yeah, I love it.
It was
That's
like
awesome.
He would inflate. Like,
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know how like when you smell like piss on like a boar, like a wild animal, you're like, oh,
No.
something was here.
No, I don't know. I'm sorry, but actually, Nathan, you went on a sacred hunt, didn't you, recently? Maybe you know.
But
another analogy.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but basically, it was kind of like that. It was like,
yeah,
they could smell like, I'm gonna do something if you say something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, Nathan, because I get that.
Powerful stuff. Allison, you wanted to chime in?
Yeah, I wanted to also say thanks, Nathan, for bringing that up, because it really brought some memories of myself when I was a young mom, and just being really ashamed of that, like being a mom in general, and feeling like it was like less than, you know, even though I felt like it was the best job ever when I was doing it. And I had a full-time job at the time, and I quit that job so I could stay home with my babies, because I was like, I just want to put all my focus into this. And so taking that time to do that actually helped me create the space to, create a business, because it gave me that time to really think about what I wanted to do, and also just focus on them. And so I think that's really important for women to know that, like, it's really important to create that sacred space so that that magic of the feminine can come out, you know, and you can really see the beauty in all of that and not be ashamed of it.
I love it so much. And I want to do the final closing comment with all of you, but just this only makes me think, for equal sake, is there anybody who wants to just chime in on, do men need sacred space for the same in this day and age? So just on that note, does anyone want to answer that? I don't know.
Can I chime in real quick?
Please.
I've seen a lot of sacred men's spaces, and they seem like a bunch of women's circles that are very shadow-like, and they're making fun of men being either too soft, or it's like, I don't know, the archetype of Andrew Tate, which, even though like you can see underlying good messages, you have to tease through them. But it's like, why are we complaining about women? Why aren't we doing about what are we going to do? You're complaining about girls, first of all. If you're talking about girls, you shouldn't be dating girls. Like if they're even, it doesn't matter if they're over 18, they're still girls. If they don't know how to conduct themselves and they haven't found themselves, that's not who you should be focusing on. And so what are we going to do, especially in a group of men with masculine minds, with safety to be like very linear? Okay, what are we after? But now there's so many spaces about like men need to share their feelings. And it's like, yes, they do. But then also, what are the thoughts that are causing those feelings? What are the steps that we're going to that's going to not absolve of these feelings, but also like, are they righteous feelings? Like, I mean, I talk to Sara about this all the time. It's like, she helps me with anger. Like I'm quick. Anger is one of those easy emotions. You know, if I think I'm justified in anger, ooh, I'm ready. It's ready to come out. And so I've had to learn how to, when is it actually appropriate for me to be angry, or am I sad? And so that's the kind of stuff that we need to do, is learn how to actually feel what we're feeling instead of only talk about what we're feeling, but not actually get to why we're feeling that way. And then the thought could be like, oh, my dad neglected me. That's why anytime someone doesn't return a text, I ghost them back and never talk to them again. And that's why no one talks to me. Weird. Like, this is what needs to happen. But there needs to be safe space, but safe space and
intelligent, wise, productive, safe space. Yep.
yeah.
Very
Which
good
goes back
point,
to
Alex.
like, how are we going to support women? Like you have a wife, you have a girlfriend, like how are you going to support her? You have a kid, how are you going to support them? How are you going to make sure you don't do the same thing that your dad did to you and then do that onto them? Like I need more of that space, because I get really irritated with a bunch of men talking about their feelings with nothing happening outside of that.
Thank you, Alex. So valuable. Did anybody else just want to wrap up that?
I'll hop in right here. Aleks, it's funny. We must have been in the same intuition, because I was going to say the same thing, where I'm like, a lot of the men's circles are so absorbed into the feminine, which again, right, it's like that swinging of polarity, right? To talk about that again. But I think that it needs to be both, right? Like it needs to be like, okay, yes, get more in touch with your feelings, know the thoughts they're coming from, understand how to mitigate them and how to work through them, but also know how to like protect your woman when she's breastfeeding in public, right? Like have both of those buttons. You know, I think if you're only focusing on one, then you're going to naturally come out of balance. And that's one of the biggest challenges I've seen amongst men's work. And so it was funny you mentioned that, Aleks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You've probably heard the expression, if it's on your skin, you're drinking it. I'm here with skincare expert Hannah Marabani from her amazing company, Seeb & Solus. Hannah, can you explain for us, what do we mean by if it's on your skin, you're drinking it?
First of all, our skin is our biggest organ, and anything we apply onto our skin gets absorbed within 30 to 60 seconds. It goes into our red blood cells, it enters our bloodstream, and it goes directly into our 50 trillion cells. And when your cells don't recognize the genetic signature of any ingredients that you're applying, they do not get absorbed properly. Your bloodstream starts to send a signal to your skin organ, which leads to inflammation, redness, itchiness, and dryness. It reduces the microbiome count, which is your good bacteria in your gut, and it reduces your skin microbiome. So the skin and gut axis gets affected heavily.
It all matters. If you also want to try her amazing products, you can check them out on my e-store. I have a direct link there. Her company is called Seeb & Solus. Seeb is Farsi for apple, and Solus. And you can enter the coupon code FITAMYTV10, all caps, to save 10%, so you can be fit and healthy inside and out. Thanks, Hannah.
Okay, everybody. Speed round, lightning round. In conclusion, final thoughts. We're going to go around one more time. And can you guys hear that noise, that little jingling noise? That's my little puppy playing with a BG16 pendant on the floor that he's not supposed to have, because it was pointed at my other dog's head while she was asleep. And now he went and got it, because I've been doing the show with you guys, and he's being naughty, trying to get my attention. And he's running around with the BG16 pendant, throwing it around the wall. So it's like crashing. So anyway, okay, speed round. So final thoughts. Let's go ahead and let's see. We'll start with Nicole, please. Thank you all so much in advance.
Well, I think that it's important to hear our words, but just tune into yourself. Like, what is aligned for me? Because in the end, we're here to dance between the masculine and feminine, and like your soul, your body will let you know if you need a little bit more fire in your life or if you need a little bit more water. And so with any podcast, book, or teacher, the biggest guide is here, right? And so if there was something that resonated with you today, some kind of practice or information, to take it and think about how you want to make action on that, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to grow and experience and learn. So that's my lightning round.
I love it. Okay, let's go down to Nathan, please.
Final closing comment. If you, especially if you're a man, but if you're also a woman who doesn't really know what the hell we're talking about, and you want one easy thing to do to support women and to show that you actually respect them, if they're talking, whether it's around in a boardroom, if it's at work, if it's in the coffee shop or whatever, if they start speaking and somebody interjects and interrupts them for the millionth time, ask them, hey, please stop. She was saying something. Simplest thing you could possibly do. I've learned that the hard way myself. And if you're listening to this episode and you're hearing these incredible voices, each and every one of these people has an intentionally crafted business whereby they can help you to sort of understand who you are and how you show up in the world. And I really encourage you to go and check out everybody's stuff. Go buy their shit. Go buy my shit. If you need to book a call and talk about what pregnancy, fertility, fatherhood, what any of this shit means, I've got you. Just go to my website. And I think collectively with the 6 of the people in this call, not even including our incredible host, Amy, you really will, I think, find it much more easy to understand yourself. And if you want to support other people, you have to understand yourself first, which I think maybe Allison or Nicole had mentioned earlier. But thanks for having me, Amy, and it's a real pleasure to see everybody.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, all that will be in the introduction and the notes as well, everybody, because I'm sure everybody's going to want to contact all you guys. Okay, thank you so much, Nathan. And let's go to Aleks.
Speed round. I'm actually coming pretty slow to this.
Just final
so
thoughts.
Final thoughts. Thoughts, words, actions. One comes before the other. You know, I'm pretty sure my wife taught me this, and she has a model for this. And so there's something that you need to learn. There's a thought that comes in. There's an emotion that happens, and then you take an action. Most people have a thought that comes in and goes to action. And so kind of piggybacking what I said earlier, for a lot of men that don't even know their emotions, figure out what emotions you have, go through these processes to figure out why the thoughts are here, because this is on a full spectrum gonna bring you closer to who you are, masculine or feminine, or even both. Because if you understand what your soul or spirit or your life is trying to get you to experience, and then you start rifling through the thoughts that are coherent with that, and then you start feeling emotions based on those, and your actions are coinciding with that. So if your actions are out of alignment to what you want to experience, well, then go backwards. Well, what emotions am I feeling? Well, what thoughts cause our emotions? And then where am I spiritually or in our lives going? And that will bring you closer to your polarity, the understanding the polarities, or understanding the polarities better than, this is almost like the finger pointing to the moon. All of us have experienced looking at the moon, which is why we're sitting here talking about it. And all of us, whether it be through that model or not, have gone through these steps to learn and discern and tease out things that don't matter and that aren't us. And so we're bringing back closer to the natural essence of what we are. And maybe that.
That's fantastic. Inner experience rather than outer. I love that. That's fantastic. Okay, speed round, lightning conclusion, Sara.
Hopefully not.
Shows you I'm getting tired. Sorry, I can't speak anymore. Sara.
Final thoughts. I think, each of us has a feminine, a masculine, woman is going to have the masculine aspect of her soul. The man's going to have a feminine aspect of his soul. And I think, you know, his anima is going to want to seek out to reconnect and to unite. And her animus is going to want to seek out to separate and discern. And that's sort of all about the journey. And so, you know, whenever we question our own ambitions, again, going back to inner standing, we question your ambitions for whatever it is, what, you know, something you're choosing to do, behaviors, habits, needs and wants, desires. When you question the ambitions behind those, the closer you get to understanding what, you know, what energy you're in. Are you in your feminine? Are you in your masculine? Is it coming from a wounded place or a healthy place of the masculine and the feminine? And ultimately, you know, we do have chromosomes, and men will always be tempted to win the love of a woman. I think one of the questions you had, Amy, but we didn't really get to, was anything you want the opposite sex to know, or I always talk about this, is that, you know, men will always be tempted to win the love of the woman who corresponds most with his own unconscious femininity. And, you know, because she can receive that, as I said earlier, she can receive that projection from him. And because of that, I think men get this idea that women are manipulative or trying to manipulate, and really we see you. We see your shit because you chose us, because we are you. And that's all the beauty of this uniting the two together and figuring out ourselves and teasing out our shit. And there's nothing dark and twisted and manipulative about a woman when she mirrors back the very thing you're projecting into her femininity, which is your unconscious feminine wanting to come out. So she is you, and Aleks can affirm this, like, you cannot bullshit her. That's all I want to say.
Oh, we don't doubt that for a second. No. Wow. Sara, that's amazing. Yeah, that's a whole nother show right there, but very valuable, of course. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go to Allison, and then we'll round it out with Ryan.
All right. Oh my God, there's so much valuable wisdom that's been shared here in the show today. It was amazing. I came to so many memories and insights during this time. So thank you all so much. I would say if you're starting from scratch at the most basic level here, I would start with values. You know, what do you value most? And because, like, I think Nathan said this, you know, most of our values are projected onto us from media, society, family. You're learning your values from your family, but then when you become an adult, you do need to distinguish your own values from their value set, and some of them can be similar, and that's fine. But really, so many people are not asked to explore that within themselves, so they are just running around honoring other people's values. So I would start with that. And then beyond that, like, how are you meeting your most basic needs of your physical body, your emotional body, and your spiritual body? You know, are you able to meet those needs? Are you externally trying to meet those needs outside of yourself through other people? And that creates a lot of the suffering, is when we're doing that, we're not getting our needs met that way because we're not meeting those ourselves. And then after that, then you can start to then receive the support that you need in your life from other people. So I would say I would start with the values, really getting clear on that, and then exploring your needs. Are you meeting those for yourself?
Brilliant. I love how everyone gave an equally as brilliant and unique answer. This is really amazing. Okay, Ryan, bring us home.
All right, I'm bringing us home. I think I got my camera figured out too. I turn it off when you guys are talking. I turn it on when I talk to make sure it'll last. I have no idea. So anyway, talk about masculine energy. I was like, what the fuck with this camera? And I was like, all right, feminine energy more necessary right now. So
did you give it a kiss?
Yeah, I gave it a nice kiss, and so far it's behaving, so we're good. But I would say overall, like a practical thing to start with is awareness and curiosity, right? So like for people listening, like, obviously sacred polarities, I mean, there's infinite different ways in which you can think about them. But I think in order to contextualize it in their own lives, we just get to ask ourselves really good questions, right? And so for anyone listening, like what I would say is, start each day by asking yourself, like, wake up and say, how do you feel? And give yourself time to like just be with yourself and see how you're feeling, and then let your feelings dictate the day ahead. So maybe you wake up one day and you're like, I got piss and vinegar in me, I'm ready to go, send it, right? Cool. A lot of masculine energy that day, right? There might be other days though, and this gets into what Nathan was talking about, because when again, like I was talking about earlier, like we've rewarded the masculine so much that even men who are like, man, I'm just having a fucking day, right? Like we're not really allowed to take that, right? Or we're not manly or any of these kind of things, which is just complete bullshit. And I think the other thing to recognize is that, in some way, shape, or form, we're all as human beings being affected by this confusion and this challenge going on. And so I think that showing each other grace, showing ourselves grace, starting our day with this inner awareness and having an open mind, because an open mind is a free mind, right? And so like Aleks said, wise is the man who knows he does not know, or wise man asked a question once, I forget how you put it, but like, understanding that like, I really don't know what masculine and feminine are, but I'm entertaining everything, right? Because to the degree that we think we know anything, we close ourselves off from that. And so being able to just come at every day with an open mind when it comes to sacred polarities and everything in life allows us to be a lot more free. And I think for me, like, freedom and liberation is one of my core values. And, to bring it back to Allison, it's like, that's what I stand for. And so that's how I start my day. And so, yeah, entertain that, get curious, and see what comes through. And thank you for this amazing show. I mean, this is just unbelievable, guys. I mean, just the amount of information that I've gained from this has been extremely valuable. And Amy, thank you so much for putting this on. I have so much fun. It should be illegal on these podcasts.
I love that idea. Well, if we were all in person, we'd probably go do something illegal together right now that we're done.
Wouldn't that be great? I wish. The next one,
part 3, we're going to do this in person, you guys.
so that would be my dream, and let's spend some quality time together.
Well, you can
should
come to our
add that
place.
to your intro for the podcast. Nathan's so good, it should be illegal.
There you go. I might have to steal that one. It's fantastic.
That's the name of the show. Yeah.
Use the clip of Ryan saying it. Yeah.
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 Good idea. Good idea.
Let's do it. It's settled.
I love it. Well, you guys are fantastic. And for everyone listening and watching, and this is a little insight into my world of the amazing people that I get to just learn from and be around. And my only wish is that we could be together more and to get to know each other more. And my dream for 2023 and the ensuing years would be to do just that, because if there's one thing we learned is that, life is just so fragile. It goes so quickly. The older you get, the faster it goes. Next thing we know, it's going to be Christmas, for God's sake. And, we just have to prioritize how we spend our time, because that's really all we have, our love and our time with people that we care about and we just, want to be with. So I'm going to throw it out there that I really hope to spend more time with each of you. And again, for the audience, I just wanted to share these amazing hearts and souls with you, because I know you heard for yourself how amazing they are. And as Nathan mentioned, I do encourage you so much to look at the show notes and follow their work. I know they all do coaching. They all have similar bonds, but their own unique strengths. And almost all of them have been, all of them have been on my podcast, some of them multiple times, and hopefully will be again, because they're constantly producing new, creative, amazing, valuable things in the world. So I will thank you all again so very much. Thank you to the audience for listening and watching. Thank you for sharing it. Thank you for visiting their websites and their work. And we'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Would you like to support my mission to help empower people all over the world to be all of who they truly are? If so, please subscribe to the show, leave a review on iTunes, and share it with a friend. And if you're looking to take immediate action to align your energy and optimize your health, visit amyfournier.com. Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite. Let's awaken her together in you. I'm your hostess, Amy Fournier, and I already can't wait to be with you again and for you to hear what I have planned for the next show.
Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. To learn more about Amy, check out her website, amyfournier.com. That's AMYFOURNIER.com. You can also check out Amy's live and on-demand virtual fitness and yoga classes, and sign up for her newsletter to receive a free mini ebook of 3 of her top tips for making holistic health a lifestyle. Again, that's amyfournier.com, and get your ebook sent to your email immediately. Connect with Amy on the daily on Instagram at FitAmyTV, FITAMYTV, and watch many of the podcast episodes and subtopic clips on her YouTube channel, which is also Fit Amy TV. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite.